Buff. How we doing?
Dan the Man Donahue. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, Buffy.
Is that chair comfortable? Because it looks comfortable.
I like these chairs a lot. They're nice.
So, Dan, I know we're all dying to hear what your story is, so please just bless our ears with some knowledge.
Yes, that's why I'm here. Today, I have a real treat for you. We're going to be talking about a top secret historical mission that went awry, Project A-119. It's about to get cold in here, Buff. Real cold. Because I'm going to be talking about the Cold War. It's 1957. The United States, the Soviet Union, are racing towards space. The space race. The space race represented everything that the Cold War stood for. Communism versus capitalism. The sickle and the hammer versus the bald eagle. Both the Soviets and Americans had their top scientists working on engineering and creating space shuttles and space satellites. But most of it was all failing until the Soviet Union was able to create the space satellite Sputnik and boom, shoot it into space. Huge, gigantic, amazing. So the Soviets unveil Sputnik on October 4th, 1957, and it was launched into orbit. After the successful launch, people around the Soviet Union celebrated the win for communism, including the leader of the USSR, Nikita Khrushchev. So Khrushchev, he's in his office, he hears the news, he's ecstatic. He goes berserk, right? Sputnik's been shot into space successfully. This is huge for him. He turns to his assistant, Vladimir. He goes, "Those silly Americans, they're too stupid to know how to send a satellite into space. We have this race in the bag." And Vladimir, you know, he's right back with him. He's stroking his mustache. He's like, right, very good. Excuse me. In America, though, completely different reaction. American citizens are demoralized by this. You know, they're afraid. They start thinking to themselves, well, maybe we're not the greatest country in the world. Maybe the Soviet Union has something that we don't. Maybe I should move to the Soviet Union. So America's top scientists, they get to work on this. They're not going to let the Soviet Union shoot satellites into space and beat us in the space race. The head of the scientists for the US, let's just call him Charlie. He was all like, what are you going to do? The Russians have the upper hand. Then, out of nowhere, a scientist named Leonard Raphael barged into Charlie's office and he's like, no, they don't. I have a plan to win the grand old US of A, the space race. All of the military scientists, they were like, well, what are you going to do? And he was like, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to blow up the moon. All the scientists, they looked at him. They were like, who is this guy? But Leonard, he was unfazed. He's like, listen, we can launch a nuke from Earth and have it detonate on the moon. What? It took everybody a second, but once they wrapped their heads around it, they all started clapping. It was like they were slow clapping. It was epic. And they thought he was a genius. Cut to President Dwight D. Eisenhower. He catches wind of this operation, And he's like, yes. He calls Raphael into his office to congratulate him. He's like, you, my friend, are a hero to your country, and your president thanks you for your service. But Raphael, he's like, no, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for letting me blow up the moon. And so, just like that, Operation A-119 was born. American scientists, they start working tirelessly through the night on this top secret project. Eventually, it would lead to the creation of the National Aeronautics and Space Association, known to you common folks as NASA. Boom. So NASA starts to recruit all the up-and-coming, smartest, brightest scientists. And they find this astronomer, Carl Sagan, to work on it. And Sagan's like, I'm not sure if this is a great idea, but if my country needs me to do it, I guess I'll do it. So now they have their team, and they start going about how to figure out how to bomb the moon. They decide to go with an atom bomb because a hydrogen bomb would be too heavy to shoot into space, obviously. They're still working in secret, still working nights, strange hours, because it's a top secret mission, and they don't want the American people to find out. But they start receiving some backlash within the government. So in the White House, President Eisenhower, he starts hearing from people, getting phone calls, and they're like, this isn't a good idea, maybe you should do something else. And Eisenhower cuts him off. He's like, no, this is gonna work. Trust me, it's fine. And then he hangs up. And he's like, yeah, I told them. But I don't know if you know this, but Richard Nixon, he's the vice president at the time. He's in there, he's massaging Dwight Eisenhower's feet. You know, he looks up and he goes, Dwight, come on, buddy. You're thinking about blowing up the moon? And Eisenhower's like, well, when you say it like that, Ricky, it sounds pretty bad. Eventually, it all becomes too much for President Eisenhower, and he has to pull the plug on the whole thing. So he goes down to NASA. You know, he goes in, he walks into the room to all the scientists. They're all looking at him. He goes, listen, I gotta let you all go. It's over. It was a bad idea. We're not gonna blow up the moon. Sorry, guys. And everyone's like, what? So Project A-119 ended. But it wasn't a complete failure because the scientists that worked together on this top secret mission continued to work for NASA, had great careers. They worked on things like Project Mercury, which helped to send John Glenn and Alan Shepard into space years later. Wasn't a complete failure. The most interesting part of this story is that it was kept secret, Project A-119 was, until 2012. So this information was just released, and it's still shrouded in mystery. I don't think we have all the facts yet, but pretty incredible. Blowing up the moon.
Wow, Dan, I don't know what to say. That was incredible. Thank you so much for that. I'm just wondering, like, how do you know that much about NASA?
Don't ask me that. You're asking too many questions.
Yeah, but how do you know so much about this project?
Don't ask me how I know about it. I just know.
Well, thanks, Dan. And that's another episode of Revisionist History. Tune in next week for another episode that we haven't made yet, but will be made. And it will be straight fire and lit. See you guys later.